That's what I'm talking. Yes!
Oh, that's where we're talking about right now. It's going to be the 6th stop of the year for the Bassmaster Elite Series, the NOCO Bassmaster Elite at legendary Lake Guntersville. Tommy Sanders and Ronnie Moore with you here. And of course, a lot of the impoundments running on the Tennessee River are worthy of their own chapter in the history of pro bass fishing. But Guntersville is just a step above everything else. It's a unique place in all the world.
If you have a book of bass fishing in the state of Alabama, Guntersville might deserve 3 or 4 chapters, because from January to December, you can visit this place and see it so many different aspects. And on this lay of the lake, we're going to break down areas, also some techniques and some patterns that we should expect, not only in this elite, but past classics and past elites as well. And like it says right here, the largest lake in Alabama.
70,000 acres, 75 miles there from the Guntersville Dam all the way up to the Nickajack Dam. So many different environments, and all of them at some part of the year play magnificently.
Yeah, whether there's grass in the summer down to the fall, or whether it's early in the year and some of the rock factors, the bridges, things like that. Guntersville is expansive. You can get away from people, but there are some notorious community holes that we've seen factor in the past that you'll want to test. And when we're looking at Lake Guntersville, the northeast corner of Alabama, it's going to be one of those lakes that from end to end you can catch bass. We've talked about that. But one good thing about the takeoff in Scottsboro, Alabama, it kind of looks like it's at the upper part of the lake, but it really is mid-lake, because that river stretches far north, and those anglers launching from Scottsboro can reach those far north reaches as well as down towards the dam.
Now there's the Goose Pond area, of course. Last year, 2019, big Elite Series event on Lake Guntersville, went out of Scottsboro and the Goose Pond, and so many of these adjacent places, including Saudi Creek, played big time in this tournament.
North Saudi is a notorious place, and normally we're launching at the bottom of the lake. You got to make a run up there, race, and beat the people, but you're launching right here at Scottsboro. You're going to have, it's just a little, you get on pad for just a second, go under the no-wake buoys, and you're here. We saw John Cruz factor in the Classic here. It's a place that in the spring, you see all those pad stems and grass wanting to grow there. In the summertime, it really grows up strong, and that's what we should see, is a lot of vegetation, lily pads, grass, all kinds of mixes. But John Cruz in the Classic was keying in all those areas. It was starting to grow.
Absolutely. It includes not just the grass patches, but in some of the places where John Cruz fished. In fact, just big flats with depressions out there that were key to finding bigger fish.
Those ditches are going to be what we call a highway that leads those fish from the main lake in the summer back into North Saudi for the fall and into the winter when they're feeding up. And baits like that, a bladed jig, frogs, some things like that, punch in the grass, those are going to be some things that we factor. It's going to look a little different than the aerials we just showed, but those bass are still going to relate to those edges and those ditches like you said.
Yeah, anywhere a long point intersects with one of those major grass patches, that'll be a place where the anglers are looking for. And people talk about frogs as we lead up to this tournament, and a lot of people say, well, it's going to be a little too early for that, but I think the weather's up, it's down. I think it's going to bring some fish up shallow and be perfect for frog feeding.
As soon as the temps start to drop in the south just a little bit, that October time period, we start to get to the fall, and that is when the Miracle Mile really plays factor. It played factor in June last year when we saw Jamie Hartman take home the victory, but it's notorious, a place that, hey, everyone knows about it. You see that big white dock on the main river, you know you've reached the Miracle Mile portion, but it's so key in the fall. That river ledge goes straight up and boom, a solid grass line, and you can fish from one end to the other and catch fish on it. We saw Jamie Hartman key in on a specific spot, and that's what some of these fish will be. They'll be grouped up in a specific area on the Miracle Mile.
Yeah, one important factor on the Miracle Mile, it is main lake, and that means more current. A lot of major creeks here, but the current is always greater, always a bigger factor here on the main lake, and weather can hold up the current. There's a lot of different variables to deal with.
Wind, if you get a stout north wind, like we said, the temps are cooling down in the south. If you get one of those cold fronts that's blowing directly from the north, it can really blow out an area like this. It'll be important to find your spots. You might have to switch it up, throw a topwater one day when it's not blistering with wind, but another day you might have to, talon down, power pole down, whatever the case may be, and flip that stuff, punch that grass. That's one thing that Jamie Hartman experimented with a little bit, but it's something in the fall that we really want to do. If you want to catch some of the biggest fish, they don't like to be cold immediately, so they might hunker down in those mats, and a big weight and a big rod is one way you can catch them.
A lot of the fantasy prognosticators say, check out your big-time punchers. Are you one of that group that says, keep your eyes on these guys throughout the entire tournament?
If you're picking 5 guys, you're going to want to look at that green stuff right there, that grass. That is what the guys you want to have on your team, ones who are good at frogging, flipping, pitching, things like that. I would be surprised if we saw somebody fishing really deep doing well, but like we see on Guntersville, there's a lot of different places as we go from north Down south on Lake Guntersville, we'll go to another notorious place that we've seen the classics. We've seen Elites Factor, and that's Seabold. That Seabold region, you've seen lipless, you've seen chatterbaits, you've seen frogs, you've seen crankbaits, a lot of different aspects to here. It's not a huge, vast area, but when the grass gets up there, there's certain key stretches that it's lights out on. And we saw that a little bit with David Mullins at the Classic.
Yeah, absolutely, David Mullins. Of course, this is a place that can fill up with anglers very quickly if it gets hot, but it turns on, and like every place else on Guntersville, it can turn off, and all these anglers. Jamie Hartman told both you and me when he came back in the wake of his win there last year, he said, look, I hit the right places, but I had to hit them at the right time. Some of it was luck, some of it was proper planning.
We saw David Mullins, guys like Jason Williamson, they were fishing more of the mouth, right where it meets that main river. You know, those fish from the winter coming up to pre-spawn at the Classic. It'll be the same type of deal, fish coming from the summer deep spots up for the fall feed up. And we saw guys even like Stetson Blaylock in the back of Seabold in those marina areas. Docks factor on Guntersville as well. Grass up shallow will factor. It won't just be that offshore grass, it'll be that close to the bank stuff as well. So anglers can spread out a little bit more because there's so much more cover and key areas you can fish.
Now, we've seen big time tournaments won right here at this spot where we see Jason Williamson fishing, and Seabold Creek, you just can't count it out. But further we go south, we get into Browns Creek, we get into those causeways that played big in the Bassmaster Classic to start this year in 2020. A lot of your big prognosticators, I may include you in this, say maybe this place is not going to play so big this time.
Well, and that's the thing. You can never count out a bridge on Lake Guntersville, and it may not be the 4-day pattern that wins an event, but it's a thing that you can never count out because you can go catch the 5 biggest fish of your life coming into weigh-in. You can make a couple casts on a couple key rocks, and there's the right amount of currents flowing through there, and you can catch them. We saw that in Bassmaster Classics past. We saw that for this angler, Carl JOCUMSEN, 2015, him getting his Elite Series start the second ever time he was fished in an Elite Series event. And coming from Australia, he didn't know much about Lake Guntersville, so he said, hey, I'm going to stick to a jig, something I know, and I'm going to go to bridges because there's 20-something of them on the lake, and they're all pretty good, and he ended up having great success there. So you can never count out a bridge, but this might not be the time of year for it.
Yeah, Hank Cherry told us in the wake of his Classic win, said most times of year, not just the bridges, but along the causeway, that riprap, that's the path, that's the highway, the interstate for these fish to travel. But you say maybe not quite so prolific this time around.
Some of the bridges are much shallower. You know, they're going to be farther backs in the creeks, but some of those, the North Saudi Bridge, maybe the first bridge in Spring Creek, that Browns Creek Bridge, those are right near the main lake, so they might be the first place that those fish stop at. Hey, and if you go catch 5 fish throughout the day on grass or something else, you can roll up to a bridge on your way back to weigh-in and catch one big fish that makes a key difference. So bridges will factor some, but they might not be as prolific as other times of the year, like the spring. And speaking of the spring, if you weren't on a bridge at Lake Guntersville, you were getting lapped, and Hank Cherry showed you that at the Classic in 2020.
Yeah, Browns Creek, of course. Browns Creek is a creek, and when you compare it to the main, the factor of current is not going to be as big there. I don't know who that helps, I don't know who that hurts, but we'll find out very soon on in our Bassmaster Live coverage.
And in the Browns Creek Bridge was interesting for Hank Cherry. There was some grass blowing in. The wind direction really impacts this place because you've got that main lake north and west wind it's susceptible to, but you can get on the back side of it and be protected. Vice versa, if there's a strong south wind, you can get on the north side of the bridge and be protected. We saw Hank Cherry use what he uses best, a jerkbait. We might not see a jerkbait factor on things like this, but you could see a vibrating jig, you could see a lipless crankbait, you could even see some topwater depending on certain little corners of the bridges that have grass on them. But there's a lot of different things you can throw at the bridge. Hey, I wouldn't count out a big swim bait along those bridge pilings as well.
And just adjacent or not too far from these bridges and these causeways are little flats areas. Hank exploited one, very much a part of his Classic victory, and who's going to find the right one of those? That's another big question we have yet to solve.
We have talked about Lake Guntersville so far, from the top end of the lake to the bottom, and we've mentioned probably 27 different baits, but that is why you said, hey, every single lake in Alabama deserves its own chapter in bass fishing history, and it just so happens that Lake Guntersville has many of those chapters occupied. We saw even Hank Cherry mess around with a crankbait a little bit through a vibrating jig, a regular standard, flipping jig, and then that jerk bait. So I think we're going to see some anglers switch it up. Swim jigs might factor, all kinds of topwaters could be in play, and it'll be a great week for the Bassmaster Elite at Guntersville.
Coverage coming September 30th through October 3rd. Bassmaster Live. You and I are going to be all over it, and I think we'll be getting some of the answers to the questions we have put forward there. But Ronnie, it just thrills you that we're going to go to Guntersville at a time we never get to go there.
What's great about it is it might be tougher fishing than we're used to seeing at Lake Guntersville, but with those cool down in the southeast, it could really be on fire. These anglers could catch it at the right time. We're going to see some great visuals at least. Even if they're only catching 3 to 5 bites a day and they're big ones, we're going to see some great frog blow-ups. We'll see some big rod, big weight, thick grass, those catches like that. It's going to be one to watch.
Yeah, big expectations, and I agree with you, Ronnie. We're looking so forward to it.